curiosity is something that I almost have a childlike inclination towards, and I think, you know, people who are similarly minded or similarly kind of inclined, I tend to be drawn to.
Thanks again for making the time. Really appreciate it.
Of course, happy to chat.
It must be nice to know why I reached out to you. And what I mean by that is, it's not because of your position at Google. It's not because you're a Harvard Law grad. It's not because you volunteered in India or that you're a rock star or a traveler.
A failed rock star.
Well, it's because that you bring personality and curiosity into what you do in a way that really touched me. I saw some of your videos online. I saw how you were kind of warming up an audience, not being afraid to take your shoes off and be yourself, even in an environment that sometimes doesn't welcome those kinds of things. I was just really moved by it. So I just thought, as an individual, as a person, I wanted to talk with you and to share our conversation with a broader audience who would also appreciate learning about you. And that's the impetus for the conversation on our end.
Great. No, I appreciate it. I think that, I mean, you picked up on some things that I think maybe I don't even think twice about, as in, I'm not wearing shoes now. So I'm glad that you're kind of picking up on things that are authentic and things that I, you know, kind of care to be associated with.
So with the first question, I would just like to know, what are some of the important questions that you're thinking about right now?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm not sure how many of them are important, but I'll tell you the ones that are at least important to me. And they're probably in two categories. So one would be the things I think about at work, and the things that are not work. So, and I know that we're talking mostly about me and in my personal capacity, but given that I spend, you know, 40 plus hours a week in an office or what we call campus, I spend a lot of time thinking about that. And just briefly, I'll say, you know, the thing that we think about a lot, and then I end up mulling over even when I'm not in the office, is what can we do to help entrepreneurs all over the world? And I think, you know, as background, I right now I work for Google for startups, and our big mission is about helping startups all over the world. And so thinking about what that means, what does it mean to help startups who are not in Silicon Valley, startups who are founders who are not from the kind of majority or typical background or experience set. So I'm thinking about that a lot, and I think about that in the context of lots of other investors, corporates, third parties, et cetera, that are working with startups as well, and how do we differentiate what we do from them. So that's kind of the work side, and there's a lot of subcategories in that, of course, and I can go into those if interesting. But you know, the other thing in this, if you choose to edit, you may edit, but maybe TMI. But I'm also every year more and more drawn to the idea of not having children. Now, I'm going to go on the record by saying that may change. It's very, you know, 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, I would never think there'd be any other option besides having children. It was definitely something I was going to do. So 12 years from now, and maybe it's a little bit too late, but maybe not, I might choose to have kids again. Who knows? But right now, every year I think about not having children, and it's not at all a judgment against children or people who have children. I think I love kids, and I think having and raising kids is one of the hardest, probably most important things people do. But I think about how much time I'm going to have on my hands without children, and I think about what I could do, and I think that's exciting. It's like the gift of time, the thing that every week and every day I wish I had more of. I actually do have a lot of.
I initially asked the question about the questions you were thinking about. The first answer was about your work life and your work with helping startups. And now I want to follow up on that point, because if you open any book on startups, whether it's Lean Startup or Strategizer or Steve Blank, or I mean any luminary on startups, and you did like a Control F and you type in the word listening, you would have like 10,000 times the word listen to your customers, listen to the market, listen to your team, listen. And sometimes startups, you know, that's kind of their Achilles heel. The reason they don't succeed often is that they don't seem to heed that advice. So my question to you is, with that advice so prevalent and so available with mentors and people and literature, why is it so often ignored?
Well, I think listening is hard. And I think it's, I think if you did the same experiment with self-help books or relationship uh, advice books or any kind of engagement with other people, listening matters a lot. And it's a thing that we, we're always doing, or at least we are always set up to be doing, but it doesn't mean we're always doing it well. So you can, I hear lots of things all the time. I guess the distinction here is between hearing and listening, but listening involves processing, often involves a kind of response, whether that's nonverbal or verbal, to acknowledge that you've listened. Often that means repeating back to the person what you've heard, because in your processing, you may have actually understood something that wasn't what the person meant. It's the same thing in all these. I took negotiation classes in law school. I've taken mindfulness and negotiation classes at Google. Active listening is always a core part of it. So I think for startups, it's not that people are neglecting this advice. I just think it's hard to put it in practice, and it takes a lot of practice. The other thing I'll probably add that might make it different from the relationship example is, especially with startups that are doing something innovative, right? If you're creating something new, if you're creating a new product or a new technology or a new way of kind of engaging with technology, to be a visionary often requires thinking differently than everyone else. The kind of classic example is Steve Jobs or Henry Ford. Steve Jobs hating focus groups, and Henry Ford saying, if I ask people what they want, they would want a faster horse. So their answer is, if I was just listening to everyone, I wouldn't have innovated. And I think there's probably some truth to that as well. As in, sometimes maybe you need to listen, but then disregard. And maybe the balance of that is a really hard one to find.
Yeah, and I wonder if there's enough kind of vocabulary out there that explains that listening isn't one thing, that there's lots of ways to listen, reasons to listen, times to listen. It's not just listening. And maybe it's confusing to get the message listen when there's lots of complexity around who, how, when, why, and where to listen.
Yeah, no, exactly right. I just think that's not a craft that anyone actually truly masters, right? Everyone's always working on that, and maybe there's also an element of, not to go too complicated, but to listen, listening to oneself is also different. As in, even if you are the Henry Ford, and you've determined, I've listened to these people and I need to disregard them. Are you sure that you're doing enough in listening to yourself and kind of properly advocating for yourself to yourself? Yeah, it's interesting, actually. That's something I want to think about some more.
And I think the interesting thing here, I mean, there's so many interesting parts of this, but that listening isn't one thing. There's complexity and layers to it. And when we teach listening, maybe we should think about the nuances and not just the big concept, but all the stuff in between. So as I mentioned in the very beginning, your curiosity, your spirit of life, and this is one of the things that attracted me to reach out to you. And I know that you and I both have responsibilities to do strategic planning and to really think critically and forward thinking about our work. And I'm wondering, how do you bring in that spirit of curiosity, of adventure, of personality into some of the very complicated kind of solving the Rubik's Cube of strategic planning?
Yeah. So I think, and actually here I'm borrowing very heavily from actually some of the research that Google's people development team has done on what makes effective teams and how do we build those teams. And kind of the most important factor that they've seen is psychological safety. I think Google has done a great job of giving that term, like that's a term I can now use because I've read about it. But before that, I'm not sure I would not have used that phrase, but I would have kind of tinkered around with that concept, because I think it's often easy, especially early on in your career, to be intimidated in a room, right? If the people in the room are older than you, more senior than you, or just maybe seem smarter than you in some ways, you may not share your opinion, and everyone, uh, what's the word? Everyone loses out from that if that one person doesn't share their idea, even if it's not the idea you end up going with, whatever. It does open people's minds a little bit to hear another perspective, and you want to kind of avoid this kind of groupthink. So I think maybe sometimes I overdo this, and you could probably talk to some of my colleagues who say I do, that I do it too much. But I'm a kind of a fanatic when it comes to transparency. So I'm a big proponent of radical transparency. And again, I think sometimes that means that you're maybe less aligned, maybe less efficient, but I think it's the more inclusive way, and it also leads to more creativity. So I guess going back to your question about curiosity, I think curiosity and creativity are very closely aligned, and one kind of breeds the other, but it becomes a nice virtuous cycle as well. So I think being able to say something in a meeting that you like worry might sound stupid or is a crazy off the wall idea can then spark other people to say, oh, hey, that's interesting. That's curious. Yeah. And maybe they won't say anything in that meeting, but maybe they'll take it home with them. And maybe in the next meeting they bring it up, or maybe that idea ferments into something slightly different in their sleep. So I think it's important for people to feel comfortable. I think the word I would have used actually earlier before Google's research would have been something along the lines of confidence, right? I think we as humans are naturally curious, and as certainly you'll see this with babies, it's our way of exploring. Somehow we seem to lose that as we grow older, but I don't think we actually do. I think we just become less confident in sharing our curiosity, our open curiosity. And so I've, I think some people on my team would say I have like a childlike curiosity or wonder, but I think we all do. We just need to let it out.
Yeah. And as a follow-up on that, when you're doing brainstorming with the group, oftentimes the first rule is, don't attack ideas. You kind of let freewheeling happen, and that's established, and it helps ideas flow. But then you have like that alpha executive in a room who's like driven and no nonsense and can shut people down, but get things done. Maybe not Steve Jobs, maybe Steve Jobs. I don't know. It depends. So just that tension of like, how do you, like, some people are known for creating inclusive environments and psychological safety, and others are known for being like very hard drivers to get results, and they do get results. Yeah. I'm wondering if you could speak to that a little bit, if that speaks to you, if that frame.
Yeah, it's funny. And maybe it's just the teams that I'm on, or the company I'm at, or the people that I stay away from and move towards. I haven't had that many of these alpha characters in my interactions, and again, maybe it's because I go to the other. I find myself interacting with the people I'm inclined towards. But I think that there are things that even if you're not, again, that stereotypical alpha, that there are ways that you can undermine inclusivity in ways that, by the way, I need to work on, right? Like, I can get really excited about an idea, whether it's mine or someone else's, and then just want to run with it. And sometimes someone will just be questioning it a lot, and I'm just like, and the questioning can kind of seem antagonistic, or you can tell that this person's not on board. And I know I get frustrated with that. I'm just like, stop, we're doing it. Like, not, and I wouldn't say that out loud, but I'd just be like, okay, well, I'm not going to go talk to him or her again. I'm just going to go do my thing, because this is what I want to do now. And it's not that I've forced the whole group to do their thing. It's just that I want to do my thing, and I don't want you to get in the way of my thing. And I'm giving this all kind of in very general, abstract terms, but I think there's also, and again, not to overgeneralize, but there are definitely cultural differences here as well. So I now work. I guess I haven't even told you what my job is, but I don't know if it's going to be in the description of the video. But I head up operations for Google for Startups, and that means that I work essentially across 6 different cities, and so London, Madrid, Tel Aviv, Warsaw, Seoul, and Sao Paulo. And even London, or no, I shouldn't say even London, but I think sometimes we're so surprised at how different Brits are from Americans because we think we're united by this common language. And in fact, I've learned that I need to adjust sometimes in my kind of puppy enthusiasm for ideas and just wanting to be positive and optimistic about them, because the British way isn't exactly that way, and you might get more questions and you might get more pushback. But the pushback, I receive pushback, I think, differently than Brits do, who've grown up with it. Whereas I'm like, oh, you're pushing back, you think it's a bad idea. Whereas it might actually mean I'm pushing back because I think your idea is worth considering and I want to make it better.
Nice. Well, thank you for that. And I'd like to transition to kind of our last part of the discussion, which is just rapid fire questions, like 10, 15 seconds each. And I'll ask you the question, and you could either answer or just say pass if you don't want to answer, that's fine.
Sure.
We'll just go through, kind of like, think of it like a curiosity speed date, so to speak.
Okay.
So here we go. Where's your favorite non-office place to work from?
So I actually don't really work in offices, as in in all the campuses that I'm working in, I don't have a chair and a desk. Sometimes I do, but someone else is using it, because I don't really sit anywhere. I just kind of move around. I am hardly ever at a desk with a monitor. I love treadmill desks. I actually wish I was on one right now, but the one here in the Warsaw campus where it's being moved upstairs, so it can't be used right now. But normally I would be on a walking desk if I can be. I'd love to get my steps in. I just feel better. Right now I'm on like very stereotypical tech. Like I'm on a beanbag. But I'm usually either on a couch or on a treadmill desk.
Most underrated skill?
Mine or anyone's?
Yours. Why not? Your most underrated skill.
Oh man. Oh God. It's funny. We talked about listening and we talked about optimism already, which are 2 things that I like to think I do a good job of. I will do a very practical skill, which is I can inward scream. It's actually, now that I think about it, it may be overrated because so few people know about it that I am one of those few, and I overrate this skill. But anyway, I can do like metal screaming, like without actually screaming out outwards. I don't know if that sounds good on the hangout.
That sounded White Walker-ish.
But there's a good range of it actually. I gave a workshop on this actually last month, where you can do the good like System of a Down growl, and you just go all the way up to like a screamo kind of scream. Anyway, that's a skill.
You sometimes have a dog at the office, and if it were here, he would be like running the door down.
Howling? Oh yeah.
What was it about this conversation that really struck a chord with you, or what was a promise that might have come out of it that really seemed to resonate?
Oh, curiosity. I mean, that's a big part of your brand, and I think that's immediately what made me even open the message and then kind of pulled me in. I think curiosity is something that I almost have a childlike inclination towards, and I think people who are similarly minded or similarly kind of inclined, I tend to be drawn to. So I think you had me then.
I love it. We had each other at curiosity. How's that?
There you go.
What's your favorite way that you've been described?
Besides like puppy dog wonder. So the last 6 months, basically like the last 2 quarters before this quarter, I was doing 2 jobs because our head of campus London took on a new job in California and kind of was pursuing a lifelong dream, our family dream, to move to California. So in the meantime, we didn't have a head of campus. And so a teammate and I decided to go down to 50% on our full-time jobs, for me, operations for her brand, and become the co-head of campus London. And then another teammate of mine said, she said to me, she said, "You're not a head of campus. You're a heart of campus."
Oh,
which that was my reaction as well. It's like,
yeah.
oh.
Seen that you've kind of in your job, you've given startups some guidance about how they can follow up better with companies and executives and people. Is there a hack that's your favorite, or one that you think is just the most effective?
Well, there's a general theme, which I think it kind of informs all other hacks, or rather informs approach, which is remember that I'm a person too. I think that's in that talk as well. Like I was like, here are 10 tips to, help you pitch large companies. But the main theme is like, just remember the person you're emailing or calling is a person, and that person has a boss, and that person has things he or she needs to do in a calendar and everything. So make my life as easy as possible. Put yourself in my shoes. Imagine like what my boss cares about. Imagine what I care about. Imagine what it's like to deal with my inbox, and then position that person perfectly well. So solve that person's problems for them, where they get this email and they're like, oh, this person's going to solve my problems and make me look like a hero in front of my boss and save me lots of time. Great. I will take that meeting. That's the general theme. In terms of an actual hack, for me, the one that I have employed for many years is when I know someone needs to follow up. When I email someone, for example, my whole life is around emails. When I email someone and I need them to respond, or I'm worried that they're not going to respond for whatever reason, as soon as I send that email, I'll put a calendar reminder for myself, an all-day event, usually 7 days later, to say, follow up with Zach. And then I'll get that email. I was like, oh, okay. Zach, hey, just want to make sure. And if the person has done it, I just swipe it away and it's not a problem.
Awesome. 2 more questions.
Mm-hmm.
A poignant childhood memory.
Ooh. Oh my God, I have so many, but I'll tell you one that I was thinking about recently. Oh no, this is a sad one.
It's okay.
And but it's, I don't even remember why I was thinking about it recently, but I just thought about it. Anyway, it was very silly. My cousins were visiting from London. So I have two younger sisters and then 2 cousins, a boy and a girl, both older, and my aunt. The 3 of them were visiting from London. We were in the car to go to the zoo in LA, and we all had to eat pizza beforehand. Like it's like a thing that kids like to eat. But for whatever reason, we didn't like the pizza. It was like too much tomato sauce and not enough cheese. I don't know. So no one liked the pizza, and I especially I made it a point that I didn't like the pizza and that I wasn't going to eat a pizza I didn't like. And so my mom and my aunt made a rule, and we're in the car eating the pizza in the car. She said, whoever doesn't eat at least 2 slices can't go to the zoo. So my cousins all ate, and my sisters ate 2 slices each. I refused to. And so then we got to the zoo, and everyone's like, let's get out of the car, let's go to the zoo. And I was like, no, but I didn't eat the 2 slices. And I was like insistent on this rule, and this rule be followed. Like I don't know if I was trying to stick it to them to be like, you made an unfair rule about unfair pizza, and now you're gonna have to make me suffer. And the sad part is, I fought this for so long. My poor mom had to give in. She's like, okay, you can't go to the zoo. And so this is really sad. My mom, it's ridiculous, but sad. My mom was not going to the zoo. She was just dropping us off and doing a bunch of errands. She dropped them all off. And then because I wouldn't get out of the car, I ended up sitting in the back of the car while my mom did all these errands. And my cousins and my sisters went to the zoo. And I was like, I remember as soon as we got on the freeway back, I was like, oh shit, this is over. Like I can't go to the zoo now. Like I'm in the car for the next 8 hours. And I just lost in my like stubbornness.
Wow.
It was really sad. But also, and the reason I should not share this is my mom would hear this and probably get really sad. But she shouldn't. It's okay, Mom. You did the right thing. I did the wrong thing.
Last question. People are going to watch this, and there'll be a little comment section in the blog post. Is there a question you want them to answer? Can you ask a
Oh,
question to them that you'd like to see their reaction to?
huh. Um, it's interesting. I, my initial reaction was to say, is there anything I said that you disagree with? But I actually don't want to do that because I don't want it to become like the comment sections of so many parts of the internet, which are trolly and negative. But I do want to also engage in like a discussion because I think like if someone disagrees with the point about, for example, legacy not being selfish, I'd love to hear about that. So maybe there's a way to tailor that. Like, is there anything? Maybe if you're gonna if you have to say something you disagree with, you have to also say something you agree with. So, is there anything that you disagree with and why? But only if you've already told me something that you agree with and why. How's
Um,
that?
it sounds great. I am so appreciative of your honesty and the life that you bring to this discussion. It's really a treat to talk with you.
Oh, thank you. No, and likewise, thank you for the really good questions and the general good attitude.